It is literally true that modern American music, which is now the music of the whole world, would not be what it is without Les Paul. Les Paul was one of the fathers of the solid body electric guitar, which is the instrument of our time, hands down, and the inventor of multi-tracking, of overdubbing, of sounds we now hear all day, every day, but which no one had ever heard before he came along.
The man is a genius. Whenever you turn on your amplifier and get reverb, that's Les Paul again, because he's a great inventor.
He was very much into inventing things. So the famous story of Les taking the roll from his mother's player piano and modifying it by punching holes and putting tape over other holes to listen how that affected the sound.
Radio was brand new in those days, and I got hooked on it, and it was the most exciting thing in the world.
I met you way before you met me.
Oh, yeah?
I met you on the radio with Mary Ford, brother.
I think I had a 10-inch album, which was just so scratched, you could hardly hear anything, but I would play it backwards and just listen to all the chops.
I always like to work hard. I don't care what I'm working on. If I'm fixing a machine, if I'm designing something new, inventing, whatever I'm doing, I work hard.
Here's the man that changed the music for all of us, the great one himself, the Wizard of Waukesha, Mr. Les Paul.
Time to go to work.
Is pleased to induct Les Paul.
With those crude recordings that were made in Chicago that are so precious now, I ended up learning to play the guitar and learning to be an entertainer and at the same time a recording engineer.
When whippoorwills call, whippoorwill, and evening is nigh, I'll hurry to my blue heaven.
In 1937, I says, we're ready to head for New York.
A little white light will lead you to my
Times Square, New York, the whole thing was just a dream. I was drafted in '43, and they moved me right down the street to the Armed Force Radio Service.
When the war was over and all the men and women that had served in the armed forces came back, he already had this huge built-in audience by the mid to late 1940s that was aware of him and aware of the trio and aware of that unique sound of his.
You go out and get some trumpets, you go out and get some violins, you can do anything. But I don't want the same sounds. I want sounds that have never been heard on Earth. I want new sounds. The first time we heard that record, it was on the air, you know, and it just was an instant hit.
How did he do it? How do you do that?
It revolutionized the business. We were all trying to figure out how he did it and how we were going to be able to accomplish things like that.
Back, honey.
Hi. You know, I tied this string around my finger to remember to tell you something when you got back from shopping. I forgot what it was.
Oh, not again. Well, let's do the World's Waiting for the Sunrise while you try and think of it.
To have Paul McCartney and the Jeff Becks and the Eric Clapton and the Peter Townsend playing this Les Paul guitar, they were out there looking in their world the same as I was looking in my world.
The sustain and the ache and the roar and the ferocity and the subtleness of just that volume pedal. I mean, it's limitless.
The players, the great musicians, the people that we revere in our industry, they know every time they pick up an electric guitar why we have electric guitars. They know every time they sit down in a studio at a mixing board why that board exists. The average casual music consumer may not have the appreciation or the reverence for a guy like Les and what he brought to our world, but I can assure you that the people in this industry don't go through a day of their life in this business without being touched by something that Les Paul did, said, played, or invented.
Without the things that you have done, I couldn't do half the things that I can do now.
Well, forget your married
No,
life.
wait a minute. No. Hey, we wouldn't be able to make records like we do if you didn't invent multi-track recording.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
The music industry, whether it's the artists like an Eddie Van Halen or a Jimmy Page, who will, if you ask them any question, it always goes back to Les. The music industry understands that Les is an iconic, historic individual who's left his mark, and every generation stands on his shoulders, and every future generation will be standing on his shoulders.